Steelers Nation actually happened. It finally happened.
Yeah, finally. The trade deadline is over, and the Steelers made not just one move, the one move that we were all preaching for, that we were all asking for throughout the whole offseason that the Steelers were trying to do. They really took their sweet time doing it, but in the end, they finally did it. They really dragged it on to pretty much the deadline. But that's not the only move that they made.
No, for all the months that we went through, waiting, searching, hoping to find something of a wide receiver, they compensated with 2 trades today. They traded for wide receiver from the Jets, Mike Willaims, and outside linebacker, edge rusher, Preston Smith from the Packers. They are sending 2 day 3 picks away for next year's draft to bring in Mike Willaims and Preston Smith. These are the 2 trades that the Steelers and Omar Khan have made right before the trade deadline. And before we get into full discussion, if you were to ask me, are the Steelers better than what they were last night? I would say yes. I think they are. I think they are better. I think these 2 additions make the team better, and I think they bolster much-needed areas on the team, especially at the wide receiver room, and I think it makes our defense stronger with adding a vet like Preston Smith. If I'm going to be honest with you, I think these 2 trades do make the team better. But are they blowing me away? Am I moved by them? Not really. Because at the end of the day, they are most likely just going to be rentals for the rest of the season. They're going to be half-season rentals. I don't really see these 2 guys sticking around after 2024. Perhaps they could, but for what the Steelers traded and seeing their contracts, I don't think that these guys will be here beyond 2024. So thus, they are just rentals, which is why the Steelers got them for as cheap as they did. We're going to start with wide receiver Mike Willaims. This was the trade that every Steelers fan was aching for. Trade for a wide receiver. Please, trade for a wide receiver. We need wide receiver help. There was Mike Willaims. There was Adam Thielen, reported by Adam Schefter a couple days ago. Darius Slayton was in the mix as well. In fact, there were reports that the Steelers tried to get Darius Slayton from the Giants. The Giants would not budge.
No, they wouldn't. The Steelers were in heavy pursuit for Slayton. It's not hard to see why. But the Giants, they were just like, no, we don't want to get rid of him.
Because I do think the Steelers could have gotten better than Mike Willaims. But the thing is, if they could have gotten better than Mike Willaims, they would have. The thing is, the teams weren't willing to trade those players. Thus, they settled for Mike Willaims from the Jets.
Yeah, another name that the Steelers were trying to acquire was Adam Thielen from Carolina. You know, there were discussions there. They were really trying to talk it out. It's just, according to Schefter, the compensation was just not there.
No.
So, pretty much, they tried Slayton, couldn't do it. They tried Thielen, couldn't do it. So, they basically settled for Mike Willaims, in which, you know, dating back to this past all season, he was scheduled for a visit with the Steelers when he was a free agent. It's just that he visited the Jets first, and it was just too enticing. The money and the contract and the opportunity was too enticing. He ultimately chose New York before even visiting Pittsburgh. Right. So the interest has always been there throughout the whole offseason, throughout the whole time.
9 weeks later, he finally ends up in Pittsburgh when the Steelers trade a 2025 fifth-round pick. Keep in mind, the Steelers had 2 fifth-round picks. This is something that was in the back of my mind for the entire offseason because I was thinking, well, we got 2 fifths. Why don't we trade one of those for a certain receiver? Whether that was Cortland Sutton, who, I mean, months ago that was on our wish list, but obviously as the months went on, that was not even a legitimate, realistic possibility. But then, you know, all these other receivers, we were thinking, let's trade one of the fifths for one of those guys. And they land on Mike Willaims, who just wasn't fitting in the Jets. They traded for Adams, obviously. They got Garrett Wilson. It's a little surprising that they actually let Willaims go, seeing that Lazard is on IR. But I guess a fifth rounder was too good for the Jets to pass up. And thus, Mike Willaims is heading to the Steel City. And he will be what I would think, projectedly, the number 2 receiver opposite of George Pickens. Now, I want to get into the positives and the negatives of Mike Willaims. The positives are he's a vet. And he is a guy that can go up and get those 50-50 balls.
Yeah.
He's very much like Pickens in that regard. He's a guy that's going to go up. He's going to make the vertical threat ability. He's going to be the guy that comes down with the strong catches.
He's actually, you know, one of the better contested catchers in the NFL.
Yeah.
He showcased that ability several times when he was a Charger. I know he hasn't really done it a lot when it came to the Jets, but, there's a certain type of feeling where, maybe it just wasn't the right vibe, the right feeling, the right scheme. He just didn't, gel well with Aaron Rodgers and whatnot. Sometimes that is the case. I don't know.
Yeah, perhaps a change of scenery is what he needed. But the negatives with him is he's very inconsistent, and his injuries are always a worry, and he drops a lot of passes, as we saw with the Jets this past season. Mike Williams does not move me. Did they need to trade for a receiver? Did they need to bolster that room? Absolutely. So whoever they had to trade for, and that does improve the receiving room in some regard. Is he going to be the number 2 the remainder of the season? Time will tell. We don't really know how Mike Williams is going to do. It's just one of those things where we're going to wait it out and hope that we can get the best out of him, and he can get the best, for the Steelers. So Mike Williams, I would imagine he will projectly be the number 2 receiver along Calvin Austin, and Van Jefferson will be the top depth guy. He'll be the primary depth piece. So that's another weapon for the Steelers, man. That's another deep threat. That's another contested catcher. That's another big body, big size receiver for Russell Wilson to throw the ball to. So, on paper, it looks like a decent little pairing. I don't see this being more than just a rental, but for the rest of the season, the Steelers need to bolster it, and seeing the schedule, they needed to add some level of competition in that room. So, thus they do with Mike Williams.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by this whatsoever. There's no doubt that they had to make a move at wide receiver. Even with Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin making more plays with Russell Wilson in a quarterback, it's still the fact of the matter that they had to bolster the position and just get better at it considering the second half of the season. They needed an extra hand at that.
They did.
Now, what Mike Williams did in New York, again, maybe it just wasn't the right scheme, the right system. Maybe a change of scenery is all he needs. But what he did in New York doesn't make me overly enthusiastic about what he could bring to the table. But You'd never know. We just are just going to have to wait and see on what Mike Williams is going to bring to the team, to Russell Wilson, how Russell Wilson is going to try to gel with Mike Williams.
Sure.
But basically, they had to make this move.
Right. But, if you look at it from a scheme aspect, I think it's a good fit because you got Pickens, you got Williams as those vertical demons on any given Sunday, and you got Calvin Austin to match that with his speed and his middle-of-the-field ability and his yak ability, which I think the Steelers and Russell Wilson will continue to use. So, on paper, it looks like a solid pairing. So, that will be the pairing for the remainder of the season, and that would be just about it. But the Steelers had 2 fifths. They decided to trade one for a receiver, and it helps the receiving room. I can't hate it. The move doesn't move me. I'm not enthused by it. It's just a meh, addition to me. But we'll see how he does. I'm going to give him the chance, and I'm hoping that, he does well for the rest of the season. We're rooting for Mike Williams here.
Oh, yeah, big time. But, it's like a sign of relief. It's about freaking time. Thank goodness.
It is, but it's also where we were, where we were.
What we could have had to,
compared to where we're now.
Yeah, expectations to reality. This is reality right now. But we'll see what Williams can bring to the table.
Absolutely. And he only cost the Steelers $2.5 million this year for the remainder of the season. So very cheap, very cheap. The second move that the Steelers made, man, I don't know if many of us were anticipating a second move.
No, this was totally out of the blue. A receiver's all I asked for. One trade is all of us asked for.
Yeah, I thought if they were going to make another move, maybe an offensive tackle, because God knows we need tackle help.
But no, they looked at a different position, a position that I thought that they were just very content with, considering what we got. But they weren't satisfied considering the injuries that we sustained. The Steelers were like, what, this is an opportunity that we can get at and bring in.
Yeah, and it's a very good deal because it's going to cost the Steelers only $1.6 million for the remainder of the season, and all it did was cost them a 2025 7th-round pick. They traded for Packers edge rusher Preston Smith. He's been with the Packers for the past 5.5, damn near 6 years, and he's been a long-time starter. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he started every single game for the Packers since signing with them after leaving Washington.
Right.
That's incredible. That's the one thing he brings to this team is availability. He brings great health, a lot of experience, a ton of starting experience, which is amazing for depth. This is nothing but a depth move. He's not going to replace nobody. Obviously, we're not going to sit Highsmith or Watt. He's just going to sit behind Herbig. He's going to sit behind the starters. He's going to be the 4th edge piece. Now, where Nick Herbig is in terms of his injury, Tomlin says he's okay and good to go. So this is just more of like a Marcus Golden edition.
Yeah, because that's all I see, Preston Smith kind of filling in at the moment when it comes to edge. He's filling in that Marcus Golden role. He's that, longtime veteran that's been around for quite some time. If Nick Herbig is fully healthy, he's good to go. You do not limit that guy. I mean, when he's on the field, you got to get that man involved.
Obviously, but you got to keep them free. You got to keep Highsmith and Watt fresh.
Yeah, and this move is also what that does because, our fourth guy, or our initial fourth guy, Jeremiah Moon, he's a very good special teams guy, but, when he got the reps in there, when he had to step in, when Herbig was hurt, like you weren't seeing a lot when it came to rushing the passer. But he's a good special teams player. That's where he fits best.
Yeah, but he's just not a guy that you lean on to help relieve Watt and Highsmith and still make an impact. Very, very much of what Herbig and Golden brought to us last year. That's why they traded for Preston Smith. It's a very cheap deal. He will most likely just be a rental for the remainder of the season because his cap hits the next 2 years are pretty massive. Now, keep in mind, nothing is guaranteed after this year.
Yeah, the cap hit is pretty big. It's in the double digits.
It is. Nothing's guaranteed, though, so the Steelers can literally cut him after this year and suffer zero loss. So all they would lose is a 7th-round pick for next year. That's it.
But if they really want to, because keep in mind, Omar Khan is the cap wizard, if he really wanted to, now I don't know how he would do it, but Omar Khan is familiar with it. He could rework that deal in some way or fashion if he really wanted to keep Smith around for another year, maybe.
Well, keep in mind, he's going to be 32 on the 17th this month. So he's up there in age.
He is. He is. But, I mean, the guy has showcased that he can still play. He can still go.
He can
and
still
And him
still
being
go.
a depth guy, is only going to savor that as well. It's going to I feel like it's going to benefit him in the long run.
Absolutely. And the thing is, the Packers were looking to get rid of him. Either they were going to trade him or cut him after this season because of his contract. This was nothing more than a cap dump for the Packers. And he didn't fit in the Packers' new scheme. And they changed schemes. They went from a 3-4 to a 4-3, which obviously didn't fit Preston Smith. So now he's going to come back to a 3-4, which he's very familiar with. And the thing with Preston Smith is, he'll be the fourth edge piece. But if we need someone to blitz interior or move to the interior piece, he's going to fit that well. Very much like very much what DeMarvin Leal role was this year before he got on IR.
Yeah, keep in mind, he's out for the season. And Steelers right now, when it came to defensive line depth or, defensive line edge depth, they don't have anybody that can fill that position anymore. All they got is Loudermilk, and the guy hasn't,
Loudermilk, Adams,
and Adams
that might be it.
Adams is hurt, too.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's like the injuries, they're just piling up on the D-line, so the Steelers just basically they had to figure out, man, like, how can we fill those two positions? How can we kill two birds with one stone?
Right.
This is what they did with a simple 7th rounder. Preston Smith is a big body guy with a lot of experience. The guy can be on the edge. The guy can play the defensive line if need be. That DeMarvin Leal role, that DeMarvin Leal responsibility, he'll just fill that for this year.
It's just a much better DeMarvin Leal.
Of course, much more improved.
Much better with a ton more experience, a lot more strength to his game. I like this addition because the thing is, you look at it, it's just a depth move. Well, depth is very important with the defense, especially when we got to keep our starters as healthy and as rested and as ready to go as possible down this stretch of the season. Us Steelers fans know what injuries do to a defense. You got to keep these guys fresh. You got to keep these guys ready to go for the most important times of the game. Depth is exactly what that's going to provide. So you got Nick Herbig, who's a dog when he's fully healthy. Preston Smith is really going to help keep Watt and Highsmith 100%. It's going to keep them from being gassed all game, and the fact that the offense can actually sustain a drive for the majority of the game, they can win time of possession. That's only going to improve that as well. So that's just going to mean more big plays for Watt and Highsmith in the end, and for this defense as a whole, because Preston Smith is a guy that can come in anytime and still make an impact. And you have that presence on the field where, Watt and Highsmith are on the sideline taking a breather for a snap or two, but Preston Smith is a guy who can still make a play. That's what you need.
Yeah, you get that extra insurance right there with just this trade alone.
It makes your defense a lot deeper.
You just bolstered the whole front seven just adding this guy.
Yeah, I mean, you look at our entire defense. Most of the positions are deep in value and just how many guys that can make plays. So this only strengthens that, which is a good thing. So Preston Smith, I'm a lot more favorable compared to a Mike Willaims, but I feel like both additions were necessary, and for the cost, I can't really hate it. I would say they are upgrades at the positions where we needed them, and I would say they have improved this team compared to what we saw the past couple weeks.
Yeah, and compared to the depth, I mean, they were necessary
Exactly.
moves. They were necessary moves.
Exactly.
Now, Mike Williams, I only see him staying here for basically the second half of the season, unless he like blows many of our expectations. We'll see about that. But Smith, I could see him potentially stick around after this year, but we'll see what happens.
Well, his cap hit in 2025 is 13.4, and his cap hit in 2026 is 14.1.
I know,
So
it's huge.
he has 2 years after this season. But again, the Steelers can literally cut him next year, and he'd be nothing but a rental, and they would lose nothing. The Packers are already going to suffer all the dead cap that they're going to suffer for trading Preston Smith. So the Steelers could literally cut him next year, completely avoid that contract, and lose nothing. Or they could restructure and he could return. We'll see what happens. But at the end of the day, I do view these two as nothing but rentals. But for the second stretch of the season, that's exactly why you trade for these guys. You got to strengthen certain areas and you got to go full send. It's nothing mind-blowing. It's nothing crazy. I'm not moved by the Mike Williams per se, but it's a move they needed to make. So I can't complain too much.
It came at a point where they just had to make a move. It was a necessity.
It was.
No matter who it was, no matter what or who we had to rely on, it's just they had to make a move.
They did.
I'm glad they did.
And I'm excited to see what kind of impact these guys are going to make to the team because I feel like these guys are going to be leaned on very heavily. Mike Williams is now going to be the 2, or projectedly the number 2, and Preston Smith is still going to see some time on the defense.
Yeah, so these guys, in the later stretch of the season, we're going to need them. We're going to need their big playability, their reliability, their veteranship at that.
And that's why Khan and company trade for them. So, yes, they trade 2 day 3 picks next year, a 2025 5th and a 2025 7th next year for Mike Williams and Preston Smith. We'll see what these guys bring to the table, and I'm excited to see them in the black and gold. And hopefully they can make some plays for us and make the picks worth it, even if they are here for just 9 games plus playoffs, if that. We'll see what happens.
And we don't have to wait long to see them in action either. We got the Commanders game coming up.
Yeah, we now prepare for the Commanders, man. We are off the bye week. The deadline is past us, and now we prepare for a Mortal Kombat stretch. So here we go, Steeler Nation. Hope you guys are ready. I hope the Steelers are ready. We'll see what Tomlin says throughout this week, and we'll see how the team prepares for the Commanders, man. So let us know your guys' thoughts in the comments below. How do you guys feel about these moves? How you guys feeling? Let us know your guys' opinions. See you in the next one. Here we go, Steelers.
And as always, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you later.
Peace!